What will be the ideal architecture for a modern social apps?
I think you really need to start at what is the core problem that you're trying to solve? What is the real challenge that you're trying to tackle, and how you translate it to tech?
How we can define the MVP?
You need to focus on what are the user needs.
What was your go-to-market strategy?
Build momentum in specific areas, localize the approach, keep it simple in smaller areas, actually touch grass with a lot of the users that you're actually want to interact with in the end of the day and actually want them to use the app.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Ctrl Shifter, a podcast by SmartDev and Vericel AI, featuring voices that take control and drive the shift. And today we are talking about something that I think that looks simple on the surface, but many people are still struggling to do it right, which is building a social app that leads to real-life connection. And joining me today, we have Raed Zein. He's the co-founder of Imin, the social app designed to help people connect in real life. And Raed has spent the last decade building product across mobile, backend, and even hardware system. Hi, Raed. Welcome to Ctrl Shifter Podcast. It's really great to have you with us today. So before we jump in, is there anything you would like to share with our audience?
Hi, Zoe. And yeah, thank you so much for the lovely introduction. And I think I'm really looking forward to having this discussion in general. And it's an interesting platform that you have, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. So let's jump right into the conversation today. Yeah, right. You have worked across mobile, backend, and also hardware system. So looking back that journey, how did that mix of experience shape the way you think as the builder today?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because in general, I've been lucky and fortunate enough to have been working in different positions that forced me to kind of learn very quickly and adapt to different technology stacks overall. The mix of my roles have been I've been taught to basically take things from a design thinking perspective. So you approach the problem first, you kind of have to sit down and really think about the problem that you're trying to solve, and really iterate and kind of fine tune what you're trying to figure out, what's the core of the problem, and how do you translate that back to kind of tech solutions overall. So in a lot of ways, the user experience is kind of paramount for the solution that you're trying to make. You have to make it as simple as possible, focus on the scalability in terms of the tech performance and the things that you're building. But at the core, you really need to answer, what is the user is experiencing? What are you trying to fix? And how can you kind of translate that into tech solutions overall? So it's kind of good now because also data, AI has been really helpful kind of in reducing friction and kind of translate and doing your helping you prototype and get to the design, to the actual solution that you're trying to implement. And so, overall, I feel like my career has been very fortunate, and you really need to think about the problem that you're trying to solve at the end of the day. Otherwise, you get nowhere. You don't really get traction.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for sharing that. So let's get a little bit closer into what you are building now. So Imin, right? So you are building a social app that intentionally designed to increase the real life connection. So can you tell us about the mission behind Imin and what's been the most exciting and also the most challenging so far?
Sure. So in general, the real core mission of Imin is that in an age where everything is constantly being digitized, everything's been automated, our sense of belonging is always is being digitized, and we're really losing that sense of real life connections. Imin's mission has been really to focus on how to kind of use this digitization to kind of really bring people back to the basics and bring them back to real life interaction as much as possible. So our mission is kind of just to not connect people to connect through the screen, but really to get them offline and really have that real life connection that's genuine and real and felt. And it almost feels like a commodity nowadays, especially with the whole world kind of digitizing. That's really what I've been trying to focus back at, is that we've been losing that sense of belonging and that connection. and we're trying to
Mm-hmm.
encourage that through Imin. And we've kind of started out with, two metropolitan areas in cities in Paris and Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
And due to the density and also the sense of kind of like loneliness in a lot of those bigger cities. So we've been testing it out, and we feel like there's a lot of excitement and a lot of buildup and a lot of people really wanting that genuine connection. And the challenge has been like there's a lot of momentum that we're trying to build, and there's like there's trust and safety that you kind of want to establish with your users.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, we're trying to make it as simple as possible, keep things conversational, keep things flowing in terms of onboarding the users, really get them to let us know what they're looking for so that we can find them the realest, most genuine connection that they can find, in real life in the city that they're in.
So we have talked about the mission and also the human side of what you're building. So I think let's zoom in on the product itself. This is also one of my favorite parts, which is building the social app and also the go-to-market strategy for that product. Okay, so let's get practical. If you starting from zero today, what will be the ideal architecture for a modern social apps?
Okay, that's a good question. I think you really need to start out, like I said at the beginning, what is the core problem that you're trying to solve? What is the real challenge that you're trying to tackle? What is the real solution? And what's the solution to that, and how you translate it to tech? I mean, luckily we kind of live in an age where there's so many different tech stacks that you can kind of pick and choose depending on the need that you have. For a basic MVP, what you want to build and what you want to leave out is that you need to kind of just loop essentially your MVP. You have to make sure that it works, it flows from A to Z. It actually answers the question and the problem that you're trying to solve, and coordinate, repeat, test it with actual users, get their feedback, and then go back to the drawing board again. And it's a constant process always. For our MVP, we kind of started out with a simple cross-platform app. We've built it with Flutter. We kept things as basic as possible for the start, but scalable in case we proceed and we grow in general. So you need to start out simple. You need to start out as keep things minimal to a certain extent so that you can proof and get things to market as soon as possible. Get that real user feedback and then keep iterating. Our server was also basic and located because we're operating in 2 cities. So we've kept our server local and simple. And a lot of ways Flutter is good for cross-platform. We kept things, the onboarding minimal, basic profiles, etc. So, and for real life interactions, you have to make sure that your server is always up to some extent. You have to make sure your tech stack is not lagging in a lot of ways. WebSockets and real-time chat patterns, push notifications, those are standards. And your basic matching algorithm for the different preferences of the users to kind of get them into the hangouts that they want and the users and the profiles that they would be most interested in. But also, I think if you're a solo dev or someone who's really getting things off the ground, you can really make use of a lot of the existing tools that help you nowadays, like Cursor, Cloud Code. They are very helpful if you know how to kind of set them up in the beginning with really explicit rules and instructions and context management. They could be really helpful to build something that is really truly scalable and not as clunky. But if you really misuse them, they could really build something that is really messy and hard to maintain. But you need to make sure that they're very helpful in building something that is an MVP. But it's helpful to actually set something up really nicely and clean in the beginning. So make sure you really do your research and your due diligence on that before you jump into building something that is scalable with them.
Yeah. I really like the way you keep things simple at the start. So I think that a lot of teams think about scale before they even know what user want, and then they end up with a complicated system that nobody needs, right? So in terms of tech stacks, what do these look like in practice? Like, for example, what do the typical tech stacks look like for a social app and why we use that?
Sure. I mean, I would say it's more or less like the tech stack that I kind of mentioned. So you have your simple REST API setup. Fast API are very simple to kind of set up as a backend. Your front
Mm-hmm.
end just builds your basic React app for the admin process, or a Flutter app for the mobile app. React
Mm-hmm.
Native and Expo are actually good options nowadays. I've been
Mm-hmm.
veering away from React Native for a while, but they're bringing back in with their latest updates. It's a cool kind of, there are so many different options that you can pick from. And nowadays, a lot of the LLM and AI agent models are actually fine-tuned and trained to actually help you kind of speed through and
Yeah.
develop something that is really clean with them. In terms of actual, like in practice, one thing that you do need to know, especially when you're building an app as a social media and as you are collecting information from users, is that you need to be compliant with, in terms of the security and the safety in general. Now, it's not a big deal necessarily in terms of setup. It's not. It sounds scary at first, but there are simple guidelines. You can make sure that you adhere to the principles wherever you're operating, whatever region you're operating from. So
Mm-hmm.
in our case, GDPR is our compliance system. It's in Europe
Mm-hmm.
based. We need to make sure that our users' data is safe, and they have the option they have the control over their data for the most part. So if they want to delete it, if they want to remove it, it's all within their control. So you need to make sure that's compliant as much as
Yeah.
possible. Give the control to the user.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's kind of our initial approach for the actual specific tech stack. With specific tech stacks, push notifications, I think, is also important. But FCM, they're very simple to set up. You have a lot of open source libraries that adhere to different kinds of features. In our case, we've utilized an open source library for our initial chat feature. We've built more on it. We've developed our own since then, but it's a good starting point. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
constantly reinvent the wheel. You can always take a look at what already exists online. My favorite are the open source repositories, and you can build on top of them for the most part and kind of tailor them for your own use case. So don't always think like, oh, I have to rebuild everything from scratch. Take a look at what already exists, learn from them, implement them. That's usually my general approach. So keep things
Mm-hmm.
simple, fast API on the back end, React app for your front end, admin app. You can always take a look at existing templates. And for the mobile app, my choice was Flutter, but you can also
Yeah.
pick Expo or React app. I don't think you need to go native from the beginning. Cross-platform frameworks are actually really good nowadays, and they can
Mm-hmm.
handle larger apps. A lot of large apps use cross-platform applications, and they're easier to maintain, especially as you're like scaling up in general. You can always move to native apps at a later point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that Flutter for cross platform, it can ship fast and also it can integrate quickly, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it's very straightforward. So once you have a setup like that,
Mhm.
then how we can define the MVP? I mean, what to build first and what to intentionally leave out.
I mean, you need to focus on what are the user needs. I
Yeah.
would define an MVP as what is the initial problem that we were trying to solve, and did we answer
Mm-hmm.
it with our MVP? And once
Mm-hmm.
we have that skeleton, we have the app, you have a basic UI, and you take it out to the user. It's really important to just get that initial feedback, because that's when you're going to take it and then start over again, because you might be completely wrong about the problem that you're trying to solve. I think this is really something that a lot of people in startups really miss, is that they think
Yeah.
they have the solution to everyone's problems. And when they actually go to market, and they spend so much time making it perfect as possible, only to
Mm-hmm.
like not really be answering anyone's no one's needs the product that they built. So get what you're building out to actual real users in the hands of their into their hands, and actually get their feedback, and then go back
Mm-hmm.
to the start. reiterate,
Mm-hmm.
fix. It's kind of a loop process. That's what I would say is what you need to focus on as much as possible. Don't build out
Mm-hmm.
every idea that you've had. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people make that mistake. They spend so much time on the MVP and then they don't really get to an actual testing point. Keep it simple. This is always something that my manager used to tell me when I first started out, and it still resonates with me to this day. If your app needs a manual, you built the failure of an app. You you can't. Your app needs to be as simple as possible that the user won't feel overwhelmed. Keep it
Mm-hmm.
simple. Answer one thing, and then you can always expand on it and make it grow. That's how you keep users' retention later on, and that's how you scale in your product. But you need to keep it simple initially, in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree with you. And I
Mhm.
really love the way how you describe an MVP as a behavior loop, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's very insightful. So let's look a little bit closer into the product. I think that
Mhm.
the real time interactions is very important. I mean, especially for the social app, right? On the tech side, what's the best way to handle the presence and also the notifications, the live feeds, and also the all the updates?
Sure. I mean, I would say on the tech side, more specifically, you want to make sure that you have proper implementation of WebSockets, especially if you have, let's say, a chat feature in
Mm-hmm.
your
Yeah.
application, or there's actual like interactions, live interactions between different users. Push notifications are helpful, but they're not necessarily for exact real time interactions. They're good,
Mm-hmm.
and they're helpful to kind of maintain the memory and like the usage of the app so that it doesn't necessarily overburn your device. But WebSockets, I would say, is something. SSE, your streaming APIs are also very helpful. Generally, I prefer streaming over WebSockets,
Mm-hmm.
mainly because they're more easy to maintain in different sessions. So let's say there are different people kind of interacting with the same session. WebSockets can tend to interfere with that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always, let's say, if there's especially if you're really waiting on, if you're really listening more than you are pushing action. So WebSockets are good for two-way communication. Streaming are typically good for real-time listening to events.
Yeah.
And if you're implementing something that is constantly like listening and not so much sending information to your server, then I would suggest more streaming than WebSockets. And
Mm-hmm.
REST APIs, I think, are simple enough to kind of implement one-way sending of you know interaction with the server. Um, but yeah, that's more or less I would say in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
real-time interactions. In our case, we're trying to make real life interactions in our app. We're trying to focus more on like how you
Yeah.
can actually use the app like with actual hardware integration to really enhance your real life interactions. But this is more something towards the future that maybe I can kind of tease now, but it's more towards the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I see.
Mm.
I see. Yes. Okay. When we're talking about tech side, so I think that there are also a lot of hype using AI. Like AI is everywhere. In your case, whether AI actually add the value into the app, and maybe you can share some of the example that whether that is the recommendation engine or the user matching, for example, like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly more or less where we would be utilizing AI for the benefit of the user. But I think the main usage of AI in our app currently, I would say, is more on the onboarding registration process. Now, we have an update that's coming out soon to kind of simplify
Mm-hmm.
the registration and the onboarding process for the user is to keep it as seamless as possible, make it feel like a conversation. It doesn't overwhelm the user necessarily with a lot of forms to fill out. So
Mm-hmm.
this is really, I think, where it would bring out the most value. And I think a lot of people underestimate how much a lot of apps kind of sneak in that conversational flow, that natural kind of language user experience that we kind of take for granted, I think, at this point. But a lot of apps utilize it. They make it seem simple. They make it flow easy. It doesn't overwhelm the users. It keeps the form small and it keeps it conversational with the user so that it's flexible, it's customizable, it's more personalized for the user in a lot of ways. So I think that's really the most valuable usage of our AI is just to keep things seamless and personalized for the user within our app.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's more where it comes from. On the more development side, because I'm the tech person in the app,
Yep.
it's really kind of taking over a lot of our development process. Like there's a lot of automated flows that use a lot of our AI agentic it, tools. We're constantly reiterating. It's always um, giving us feedback on a lot of the code that we're developing.
Mm-hmm.
We're always trying to improve our code. We're always trying to uplift our code, keep things scalable, keep things simple. If there is, besides the simplicity, we also want to make sure that there's not a lot of bottlenecks within our code and a lot of things that might decrease, the experience in any way. Like make sure that the latency is as smooth as possible when it comes to the
Mm-hmm.
backend server or our deployments, our setup. Keep it manageable for the most part. So on that, and Cursor, Cloud Code, and any also open source AI tools are very helpful in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very solid foundation. I think that the way you build the product is very. I think it's very simple and it's very clear. And yeah, we need to focus on
It's
the.
very simple nowadays.
Yeah, that's right. So now we have talked a lot about how you build and about the product, the tech, the AI.
Mhm.
But I think that none of that matters if people don't actually show up and use it, right? Okay, so let's shift the gears and talk about the go to market side. So what was your go to market strategy and what did your first 100 user, the very first 100 user actually looks like?
Okay, so our go-to-market strategy is really credited to my other co-founders. They're the ones that really kind of started this whole project. The project is nothing without them. Like Imin
Mm,
is nothing without them. They're the
mm-hmm.
ones that really came up with the whole strategy. They know this stuff more than they really understand how to kind of go with it. Their focus was mostly on how do you kind of build momentum in specific
Mm-hmm.
areas before the launch, localize the approach, keep it simple in smaller areas, actually touch grass with a lot of the users that you're actually want to interact with in the end of the day and actually want them to use the app. So because one of them was in Paris and the other one was in Berlin, it was a perfect kind of setup for them to actually launch in these two cities and build the momentum in these two cities. What they've done is actually we've done two accounts on social media, build up the momentum, build up with the story and the narrative around the actual application. What is the thing that
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to encourage people to do? And I think a lot of people kind of resonate a lot with the narrative and the idea and the story that we're ultimately trying to build. Is that keep
Yeah.
you know keep your connections genuine and real. And how do you kind of get to that? And that builds up momentum. That narrative that you see on social media, we're using social media to kind of promote our social media application. And we're doing it again right now. We're building momentum for our next release. And that's generally, I think, the best approach is that you create that momentum on social media.
Mm-hmm.
That's really where we performed best. We've really connected with a lot of audiences, and they were really encouraged to kind of try out the app and want to be part of the movement to test and start the early stages. And there's a lot of grassroots users that have started using our app and really growing with it and seeing how it progressed and wanting it to succeed in a lot of ways. So
Mm-hmm.
use that as a good starting point to kind of really go to market. Keep it localized, build the narrative around it, build
Yeah.
momentum on social media before the launch. Early users will really feel as part of the story of the app that you're building. And that's been,
Mm-hmm.
I think, the best result so far from what we've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love the approach of sharing the story behind I mean, right? Especially around big cities and people desire for the real connections. I mean, the story, they can see themselves in that.
Yeah, I would say, and this is again like the story that Marcello and Ricardo, my two co-founders, they're the ones that started this whole thing. They knew each other before I knew them, and they're true
Mm-hmm.
friends. Their story of like how they wanted to like really have that real life interaction and connect again with each other and connect with
Yeah.
other people around them in the cities that they've had.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that tested and implemented this social media app, and like the application vision overall, all credit goes to them. They're incredible people. The way they've kind of fine-tuned and looked at the metrics is that they've built that momentum across TikTok, Instagram.
That's cool.
They've created separate accounts for each city. So Berlin and Paris had their own accounts, so they would kind of test and see what works in that account and what doesn't, especially
Mm-hmm.
if they are targeting two different cities. And they've kind of seen how the interaction differs from these two different cities and these two different accounts, because some things work in Berlin more than Paris and vice versa. And
Yeah.
most of the metrics, there was a trial that this is something I think more on the marketing side, and this might be a good insight, is that sometimes when you use a lot of the paid um, ads, there's less long-term retention or a long-term exposure to the account. So there was a lot of like testing the waters on like what is what when they do paid ads here, what do paid ads there, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of contracting with a lot of content creators to create hype around the app. So seeing them use the app and like post on the account, that was something that was interesting. There was a big budget, I think, initially for that, creating that momentum around those. And I think at the end of the day, you need to kind of look at the metrics of like how many people are downloading the app, how many people are staying on the app. These are really
Yeah.
good key performance indicators that you really need to take a look at. So aside from your followers and the engagement that you're getting on the accounts, how many people are actually downloading the app? Does this translate to downloads and actual usage? How many active users do you have? These are really the most important, I think, indicator of whether you're going to be successful or not. Is I think
Mm-hmm.
the active users.
Mm-hmm.
If you see that growing and if you see that maintained to a certain extent, that's really where you want to focus your most efforts on. I think when you look at the app and how it performs, a lot of people will download the app, but sometimes people won't finish their registration process, or sometimes they even after they finish, they won't continue, using it. These
Yeah,
are
that's
things you
right.
need to know
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
while you're building the app, because like, well, what went wrong from this step to that step so you need to take a look at that user journey from social media interaction to downloading the app to registration to being an active user. You will lose some people in this process, and you will need to know why. So you'll need to track the difference
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes that will create a loop of encouraging other users. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to make sure that that flows as much as possible. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's
retention is
that's
the
right.
number one KPI, and
Yeah.
you need to really look at why uh, you are retaining users or why you're not.
Actually, when I checked out Instagram, I really want to download it, but I'm in Vietnam. I wish some
Mm,
days can operate in Vietnam
eh,
too.
one day,
Yes.
if we expand, we'll expand.
Hopefully, yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. So let's zoom out a little bit and looking ahead. What is becoming easier about building a social app today? And in your opinion, what's becoming much harder?
I would say it's very easy on the tech side nowadays
Yep.
to create
Mm-hmm.
and prototype and build something, regardless of whether it's on the social media app or any app in general. I think it's much easier to build something. I think it's not as easy to build something that is clean necessarily on the tech side, but that's another discussion. You can mm, put your guardrails in to make sure that whatever you're building is scalable and clean and easy. But in my opinion, generally speaking, it's very easy to build something and test it and take it from an idea to really validate it initially. I
Yeah.
think what's getting really harder is the distribution and the clarity of the value, like making sure
Mm-hmm.
that that is something that is really valuable to the user, putting it out there and distributing it for the rest of the world. We live kind of now in an attention economy to some extent. It's very hard to really get your product out there into the people's psyche. There's a constant attention competition that's going on. So this is something that I believe that is getting a bit harder. But there's also, I think, a lot of tools and a lot of ways you can kind of capture people. I think at the end of the day, it's really about the story that you're telling, because people resonate with stories a lot more. And I think at the core of it, simplicity and the story wins. If your product is simple and it has a really good story behind it, I think that's really what would resonate with users the most. And that's what will get them to try it out, and, from your most loyal users, those are the feedback that you want to take and start iterating and working on as much as early as possible.
Yeah, I agree with you that building the tech is getting easier every year. But beside from that, earning trust and also the attention of the user is getting harder, much harder. So
Yes.
so given of that, if you were giving an advice for a founder starting for today, so what will you tell them to prioritize in their first 19 days?
Validate fast. Don't obsess over tiny details. Build simple solutions to test users' behavior. I would say if the behavior differs, iterate quickly. Make sure that whatever that you're not too married to the idea that you start out initially with. Build something that's quickly validated, get that real feedback back, and then just keep that loop going, especially in the early days. Make sure that you're constantly getting that feedback, really iterating on your product, validate, keep that cycle going until you have something that really has good user retention, and you can proceed from there. That's generally what I would say. And don't be married too much for the tech people out there, don't be married too much to a specific tech stack. Try to learn the ability as much as you can to learn quickly, learn on the go, experiment with different tech stacks, and make do with what's available out there, and don't try to constantly reinvent the wheel. There's so many products and tools and third-party open source repos out there. You can always take them as inspiration to build something that is more tailored for your use.
Yeah, I'm gonna take this advice. So keep everything simple, and also stay flexible, and also open and willing to to fix things based on the real feedbacks, right? All right,
Yes.
that's very solid. So, Raed, this has been an incredibly practical conversation. I think that we come through from architecture and AI and all the way down to trust and also the human behavior. Thank you so much for joining us today and also sharing not just what works but also what is hard and what's challenging. So I think this is where the value is, right? Okay, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation, Zoe.
Yes. And to everyone, this is Ctrl Shifter Podcast, brought to you by SmartDev and Vericel AI. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Goodbye.